Adam and the entire SIFPAC crew for putting this wonderful summit together. This is an event that we all look forward to every year, and the hybrid format is much appreciated. I'd also like to take a chance to thank the ASL interpreter, as well as Letty for the interpretations. And I also would love to thank my fellow Chicago Farmers Market Collective folks that are panelists on this panel today. And just before we go into our first poll, I just would like to explain to folks who are joining us today that I'm Taylor Choi. I'm the operations manager of Green City. I'll be your moderator today. And along with Joan from Andersonville Farmers Market, Kathleen from Plant Chicago Farmers Market, and Matthew from Uptown Farmers Market, we are part of the Chicago Farmers Market Collective. For folks who don't know, the collective is a volunteer-run group made up of independent and City of Chicago Farmers Market directors, managers, and staff. We all work in partnership together in order to achieve local food access and work with partners in the area, state, and national organizations. Our mission is to advance the local food economy through a network of community-based farmers markets in the city of Chicago. And we envision an equitable, sustainable local food system in the Chicago region utilizing these farmers markets. And we're united by our common goal to provide Chicagoans with access to locally grown, nutrient-dense food. And we strive to support our markets, communities, vendors, customers, and one another through resource and knowledge sharing. So to kick us off, we're going to do a short poll asking you folks, what do you think is a farmer's market? Awesome. I'm seeing here that most of us have answered the poll. We can go ahead and share those answers, Adam. Oh, there we go. Awesome. So the majority of you folks answered where I get locally grown and produced food. None of the other answers are wrong. This is a poll. There are so many different ways community members utilize farmers markets, which we'll get into today. And on that note, let me go ahead and start sharing the presentation. I also want to note in here that Emily Cross from 61st Street was intended to be a part of this presentation, but unfortunately could not make it. So instead, we have Kathleen Valdez from Plant Chicago Farmers Market here to provide her perspective on the Plant Chicago Farmers Market. And with that, I would love to get into our first question or first prompt. We have a great community of farmers markets here operated by talented operators. Starting with Joan, can you please introduce yourself and provide a brief intro about your market?
Absolutely. My name is Joan Oberndorf. I am the market manager for the Andersonville Farmers Market. Our market started in 2009, and I have been the market manager since 2010. Our mission is to provide a vibrant and inclusive gathering space for our patrons to access locally grown and produced food. Everything at our market, we are a food-based market, and everything is grown and produced within a 200-mile radius. I don't know, Taylor, if you have the collage slide or not. It shows a couple of things that have gone on in our market. We also have entertainment. We are dog friendly. You can see the pup in one of those pictures. And then we have a variety of entertainment also that is family friendly. And I love this slide because one of our high points is we have a yearly visit, sometimes twice a year, from Clamor and Lace, which is an inclusive marching band. And they are definitely a favorite of everybody at the market, both the vendors and the shoppers. So it's just a great, vibrant place to be.
Thank you so much, Joan. Matthew from Uptown Farmers Market, can you also introduce yourself and provide some information about the Uptown Farmers Market?
It would be my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me here. And in addition to the thanks that went to the organizers, and so I want to thank everybody that's here in the audience listening to us. I think we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but as Joan mentioned, it's a vibrant place. All these farmers markets are vibrant places. All of these connect to local, connect to community. It's all these wonderful things. And you being here, learning and listening about that, it warms my heart, and I really, really appreciate it. And I think we all appreciate that you're here. So the Uptown Farmers Market, we are a new market. So we started in 2021. So this will be our third year. And we were started really out of what happened with the pandemic. And I think we'll talk more about that in just a bit. But so I'm the president of Chicago Market, which is a community co-op. That's a grocery store that's opening right at the corner of Broadway and Wilson, right here in Uptown. And the reason that I talk about Chicago Market first is really Chicago Market's mission and purpose is about building a better food community. We say that we're powered by our owners, but really powered by our community, all these pieces coming together to create and strengthen local food connections that are honest, accessible, educational, and inspiring. When you talk about those things and you think about that, one of the epitomes of all of those missions and visions of that comes back to what farmers markets bring. And so that's why we started the Uptown Farmers Market right here in our community to bring all of that together, to allow our community to have a place to come shop for great food. Trying to think of the other answer. So yeah, you go and get your locally grown and produced food. It is a fun event. You have live music and a lot of the things you're going to see at a lot of these markets. But we are really excited to be a part of the community, and we felt that starting this farmers market allowed us to be even a bigger part of that. As a second year going into our third year market, we're still smaller than most. We only saw about 15,000 shoppers. We're really proud of that, but it's still, we're still a growing market. And I think the other thing that a farmers market allowed us to do was to find a way to help with the local community. So whether it was providing compostable bags to all of our vendors so that all the food went out in a compostable bag that they could then throw away and not feel as bad about, or totes that were reusable. It just, again, went back to connecting to community. It went back to that connection to the farmers and to bringing wonderful goods in and allowing all of our neighbors to be able to shop and eat and enjoy a market. And then, of course, selfishly, all of these things, because I live right in Uptown, I wanted a market that was right there. I love Andersonville's market. They're very close to us, but it's just we're just far enough apart where it's too long of a walk, so we do really well, and I think we're additive to each other. So thank you again so much for having me here. That's just a little bit about Chicago Market and the Uptown Farmers Market.
Thank you, Matthew. All right, we will move over to Kathleen Valdez from the Plant Chicago Farmers Market.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us on this call and for including me in this discussion. I feel like we're going to touch a little bit more on parent organizations, but just to give you a little bit of context, Plant Chicago started in 2015 and we've been running since. We were at the plant up until 2019, and then we relocated to Davis Square Park. If you could go back to the slide before, thank you. So our mission as an organization is to cultivate a local circular economy, which basically consists of those four little circles: knowledge and material diversion, knowledge, like sharing the wealth of knowledge that we have and the resources that we have available, and providing like educational programming both as an organization, but making sure that it's available at our farmers market because that's generally free and accessible to the community. The material aspect kind of has like to do with the diverting materials, hard to recycle materials like light bulbs and batteries, and composting. We provide free composting at our farmers market, which is not necessarily accessible in the southwest side of Chicago. And money and nutrition kind of overlaps with all of us. We are supporting small businesses in growing and providing a platform for them to connect with the community that they would otherwise not have access to. And the nutritional aspect is making sure that these foods are locally sourced, locally grown, and accessible to them, and it's affordable. We emphasize to our vendors that this is a low income community, and we want to make sure that I respect the prices that they have, because as a farmer myself, organic foods are not necessarily always affordable. So we make sure that we are providing link matching and sliding scale options when possible. But yeah, so our market is located at Davis Square Park. It's in the southwest side of Chicago. We are one of the few farmers markets in the southwest side of Chicago. It's a very small market despite the length of our existence because of our relocation. There's a lot of gang violence in the area. And so that's something that I've been learning. Being in back of the yards, I've been in Edgewater. That's where I not grew up, but that's where I was for like the past few years when I was in Chicago, and then just understanding the dynamics and adversities in this city. If you could slide it down to the next one, I would. But yeah, we were able to support a lot of our vendors by providing link matching, and the Senior Farmers Market coupons really supported a lot of our fresh produce vendors and honey vendors, which we're very proud of. We technically had like 25, 26 vendors rotate through our market in the season, but again, it is very small. There were days when we had 3 to 5 vendors, and it's just like, well, the market's here, we're gonna keep going. And there were days that would just like, we'd have 12 vendors, like, okay, this is more than I can handle. But we're proud to say that 92% of our vendors are small businesses, and our networks are women-owned, and 81% are BIPOC farmers and growers or small business owners. But yeah, that's overall the Plant Chicago Farmers Market in a gist. And the last slide was just like some little anecdotes that really warmed my heart. I'm in the process of doing our annual report, or like getting feedback from all that. So I received the feedback from Beautiful Honey, one of our honey vendors at the market, and a small family that's been attending our market for years before my time. When I met them, it was just like the mom had her first child as like a little toddler that was 1 year old, and the other was in her belly. And in the past 2 years, they're both growing, and they're like 2 and 3 years old, and they're just absolutely adorable.
Thank you, Kathleen, for that beautiful explanation of Plant Chicago Farmers Market. I hate to put you on the spot like this, and panelists, I did not plan for this question, but for folks who are not aware of what a link matching program is, Kathleen, would you mind taking a minute to explain what link matching is?
Of course. So every state has their own version of link. It's basically food stamps, and in the city of Illinois, or in the state of Illinois, we utilize the link, which is a little blue card. It's kind of like a credit card, and it helps low-income families have subsidies for food, fresh foods, and all food items. Experimental Station, which is connected to 61st Street Market, has allowed many markets in the Chicago area, but it expands beyond the Chicago area to match their link dollars. So if somebody purchases bread and meat and it costs $20, we can provide 20 voucher coupons to purchase fresh fruits and vegetables, so they can go home with $40 worth of food, but only spending 20.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kathleen. Just as a note from another market operator, I just want to add in here that typically independent vendors cannot accept their own link benefits. It's quite a hoop to go through. So the ability for farmers markets to accept link or SNAP benefits is huge. So that way the money that can be spent off of those cards goes directly to our producers. It's really a win-win situation, especially if you can further incentivize stretching those dollars. Awesome. Now back to our regular scheduled programming. Sorry for the deviation. But our next question is, just like the communities of Chicago, farmers markets are diverse. What I mean by that is certain farmers markets in Chicago are independently run, either by nonprofits that may be chambers of commerce, 501c3s. They can be for-profit. And they also can be run by the city of Chicago as a public farmers market. So from unique missions to vendor makeup, management style, farmers markets are operated by unique parent organizations. Matthew, we're going to start off with you first. Can you share more information about your market structure and how your parent organization works?
Absolutely. Be my pleasure. Oh, there I am. I just got bigger. Hi, everyone. And I talked about it a little bit in when I was doing the intro, and I'm that horrible panelist that jumps forward to a question that the moderator is going to ask next. So sorry about that, everyone. But yeah, so we're a part of Chicago Market. The Chicago Market is a cooperative. So we're a cooperative grocery store that's going to open up. The good part about being a cooperative is that so many of the things really do align from a value standpoint, from a how we want to bring local food together. And I think it's an interesting one, because so many times we see chambers of commerce and groups like that are involved in this. And I think the beauty of that is that sometimes they have a little bit more access to figuring out how you get a space or what you need to do. We came into it a bit blind. And so I would say, while our parent organization for the Uptown Farmers Market certainly is Chicago Market, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about Janie Maxwell, and actually Joan as well, with ILFMA and the Chicago Farmers Market Collective, that helped us so much in learning what it was going to be and how to work with these things, as well as our Chamber of Commerce and Uptown United, which in our area works very heavily on like the arts programs around here. And so they've all been so supportive of this. So certainly, while we may be produced by one organization, there's never a farmer's market that just has one little thing behind it. It's always a community that comes together both to build it and to make it be successful. But to talk just a little bit more about the parent organization, so Chicago Market, we really value, we look at things like relationships, sustainability, accountability. Joy is even one of our values as well. And so we felt like it was such the right fit to look at a farmer's market to allow people to experience those things. And so from that standpoint, I think really when you talk about a way to bring people together, a place where they can go, and joy is an interesting value, right? Joy is that, how do you measure that? How do you do? I'll tell you what, when you walk into a farmer's market and you see a kid looking at something, you see these bright colors, if you're a dog-friendly market, we are, and we have this little thing called Pups of Uptown, so we take a picture of whatever dogs happen to walk through, and those get posted on Instagram, so you get all the dog owners that want to come by and try to get the camera person to take a picture of them. Joy is what really got us on this, right? We're connecting local, we're doing those things, but that's how you bring joy. Farmers markets do that. They bring great food, they bring community, but you get to see people's faces light up. You get to see a farmer that maybe wouldn't have another venue to sell at. These all come together, and it really helps us to bring joy to this community. So that's certainly what we're very excited about in doing that. So back to you, Taylor. Or I can wax the static forever. You just let me know.
Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button. Technology issues. And Joan, can you tell us a little bit more about your parent organization, your market structure?
Yeah, absolutely. Our market has a bit of an interesting history because we actually were started by the Andersonville Chamber of Commerce. They did a lot of research within the community to see what people were feeling was missing from the Andersonville area, which is a neighborhood on the north side of Chicago in the Edgewater region. And so for the first span of time, we were owned and operated by the Andersonville Chamber of Commerce. We were an independent farmers market that was privately owned. There is a sister organization to the Andersonville Chamber of Commerce called the Andersonville Sustainable Community Alliance. And that organization is really focused on sustainability, environmental actions. And at a certain point, it felt like it was a great fit for ASCA to take over ownership of the market. So they did. And we are now owned by the Andersonville Sustainable Community Alliance, which is a 501(c)(3). And it's been a really great fit. It's been a wonderful experience working for both those organizations. I really feel that our mission dovetails very well with that of ASCA's. We really focus on making ourselves of a space where everyone is welcome. It's the market is very inclusive. Andersonville tends to be a very inclusive neighborhood as well. And I would say that goes from the very bottom to the very top in terms of our vendor makeup, our shoppers, really everything. So I really feel like we're very fortunate, and I'm very grateful to be owned by such a, not me myself, but the market that I work for, to be owned and overseen by such a great and thoughtful organization. It's really helped us grow. There's been a lot of support within our board, and I have nothing but good words and gratitude for that.
Thank you, Joan. And Kathleen, I know you went into a little bit about Plant Chicago and its 501c3 nonprofit status, but how does your farmers market fit into the whole mission of Plant Chicago, understanding that circular economies are at the center?
Thanks for the intro. So Plant Chicago has always been a nonprofit. Our sustainability mission, circular economy concept, kind of just entails material diversion, education, sharing resources, both food and other kinds of resources, and diverting material kind of falls into that, because diverting material means recycling products and making sure that hard to recycle products are just circled around multiple times. So we provide food swapping events and food swapping activities. Our parent organization is Plant Chicago, and the food access program kind of just falls into that markets. The farmers market falls into the food access tier of our mission. But we wouldn't be able to do any of this, obviously, without the support of our partners. I honestly could not be more thankful of the community partners that have been connected with the Plant Chicago before I was even part of the organization. And despite staff rotations in the pandemic, both on our end and our partners' ends, the relationships that were created before my time and before their time have really allowed organizations to flourish and work together. Chicago Commons, which is a nonprofit organization in the neighborhood, provided a lot of relationship building with community members that did not have food access, especially in 2020 and 21, and they would direct them to our market because they knew that we have link access and we have a local growers in our area, and they would kind of bring a little bit of life to the party, life to the market by just providing free cooking demonstrations, which is honestly a privilege to be able to offer free cooking demos almost on a daily market day. The Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events brought dancing to the park at our farmers market a couple of times, and that we also collaborated with Free Street Theater to do backpack distributions and dancing at the park. So it really brought a lot of awareness to our market. Our relocation to a new site in 2020 basically kind of shifted the grounds a little bit, and a lot of residents on the other side of Ashland either did not feel comfortable coming to this side of Ashland because of territorial restrictions in the community, but also they did not know what happened to Plant Chicago. They were just where's our market? And it was 2020, so we did not get to start our market or advertise it as effectively as we wanted to. So we are very thankful and fortunate for the partners in the area, and our community and our community leaders that want to get involved and continue to collaborate with us and guide our progress and development.
Thank you so much for that input. From what I'm hearing is that farmers markets have a very diverse background in how they're operated, but they cannot be operated without the community coming behind them, whether it is the individual community members attending the markets, but also different organizations, both public, private, for-profit, nonprofit, coming together to also provide resources at these central locations. So thank you all so much for what you do and providing insight into how you all work together in order to get the market here for all of us. To much of a surprise to us, farmers markets prior to the pandemic were just considered as special events. During the height of the pandemic, we weren't able to operate until June of 2020, when we were deemed an essential business by the state of Illinois. As these real-time policies were being implemented, what was your perspective on the state level decision, and how did you navigate safe, open markets? Joan, can we go over to you first?
Sure. Thank you, Taylor. Yeah, it was an interesting time. And I would say that my reaction to finding out that we were deemed essential was probably the largest amount of relief I have ever felt in my entire life. Because really, just to sort of paint a picture a bit, uh, the city of Chicago would not allow us to open at our normal time. We actually, my market usually opens in May, and they sort of just, no one really knew what to do. I mean, I don't know if everyone remembers that time, probably, where no one really knew anything, and we were all just trying to figure it out. And I will say that I have an immense amount of gratitude for the Chicago Farmers Market Collective, which is, I feel like that's when we all really came together because we were all just sharing information and trying to figure it out and trying to figure out how to open. And it was a really, really chaotic time. But having said that, there were some silver linings for my market. I think it really heightened people's awareness of where their food was coming from. I think it really spotlit the fact that locally grown food is important and is valuable in a way for a lot of people that it hadn't been seen previously. We also moved our location to a different street, which actually is a much better fit for us in terms of just space. We were on a much smaller, narrower street, and the city would not allow us to open on that street because in 2020 you had to have a certain amount of space between each vendor. You could only allow a certain number of people into the market based on your square footage. And so we made a move, which again, I can appreciate what Kathleen was saying, where it's like people are like, where's the market? And you have to kind of educate people that we are in a different place. We're starting our third season on this it's no longer new location. So for us, that was a real win to be able to do that. It was a very intense season. I think intense is the word that I would choose. And I think that people became very nimble. I feel like I pivoted a lot in that season because if one thing didn't work, we just went on to plan B or plan C or plan D, because really the important thing was getting the food out there and being able to support the vendors who really, in retrospect, I heard from a lot of people at the end of the season who said that they wouldn't have been able to survive without the this channel to be able to sell their food.
I would also like to keep in mind that, as essential businesses, farmers markets, we're very different than other essential businesses at the time, which were large grocery stores, pharmacies, things like that. And farmers markets are often run by maybe one person if they're not even hired or a volunteer. And Matthew, I would love to go to you about your perspective on that decision, and maybe did the role of farmers market play different since the pandemic and what you're able to provide to the community?
Thank you, Taylor. Yeah, I absolutely think that they did. So we're going into our third year right now. So when Joan was just starting to move her market in the midst of the pandemic and figuring out how to pivot, we were just starting to figure out that we needed to start. So when the pandemic hit, we have so many connections with farmers, and we're very fortunate in being able to have a large network that we talk to regularly with local food producers and providers. And so we reached out, and just as Chicago Market, before Uptown Farmers Market was even a thing, we reached out because we had a large space. The building behind me here is where we're going to be, but it's an empty shell. And we thought, okay, we can solve a problem here. We'll allow farmers to, do their CSA drop-offs here, or we'll go and get a bunch of orders. The interesting part was, we walked into it thinking, yeah, we're going to solve something. The farmers were actually doing quite well. Farmers are fantastic business people. I have to say that first. They know how to deal with good years, bad years, good crops, bad crops, bugs. The amount of things that they know how to pivot and cycle through is amazing. But so when we reached out to them and talked about what the need was, Sure, don't get me wrong. People weren't going to, say no if we could find an extra sale for them. But they were pivoting quicker than a lot of other businesses. They were pivoting themselves quicker than a lot of other places. But the thing that we kept hearing about that they were worried about was, what is it going to look like? Sure, I can switch to home delivery or people can do pickups right now. What's that going to look like in 3 or 6 months or a year? And at the time, I was still drinking the Kool-Aid and saying, oh, no, it's a few weeks, we're through this, everything's good. They certainly saw, I think, more than I ever did, how long this might impact the overall food economy. And so that was, for us, really the pivot point where a bunch of volunteers came to us to say, yeah, we like what we're talking about here. We like what we're doing with the orders, but really we think that we need to build a farmer's market. We need to find a way to do this. And so we probably wouldn't be here if it weren't for the need that became apparent to us of having more of these locations for people to be able to connect to food. Now, the other side of it, I think, is more than ever coming out of the pandemic or going through the pandemic, I think people realized how important farmers markets are. I think people started to realize that, and I'm not knocking groceries, go get a lot of stuff at your grocery stores, but when you have the opportunity to go make that connection, to buy from a farmer, to hear the story of what the plants are doing this season or what happened in the garden, you just connect so much more with your food. And I think through the pandemic, that was one thing that we were all missing, right? It was connections. We can still be on Zooms, and I'm happy we're all here on Zooms, but the amount of Zooms that all of us are on at any one day or any one week, it was astronomical during the pandemic and still is. So we were missing that connection to people. And I think that that's something that I'm so happy that the state and realized that not only is it access to food, yes, it's an essential service. It absolutely is. It provides people with opportunities. And Kathleen, you talked about it before about, Blink and Snap, giving people the opportunity to buy better food, to put better things in their body, to better their wellness through this. It is absolutely essential. And I think it was so important because the more ways that we could connect, even if we had the distance, even if we had to be over there, I could still wave to my neighbor that I might not have been seeing through that time. And for me as a shopper, and Joan saw me up at Andersonville, we were up there shopping. We were trying to hit as many farmers markets as we could because it was the way that we could connect. So I think the pandemic in some ways, I don't know that it helped. I don't know if you ever get to say that with the pandemic, but I think it made it more visible, at least to me, of the importance of that connection, not only to a food provider, but to each other. Thanks, Taylor.
Maybe we'll call it a catalyst. Awesome. I really love that point that you made about human connection. How often do we get a chance to talk directly to the people that make our food and create connection and ritual connection over that? As humans, we are wired for that type of connection. And especially after hearing Joan having had to change locations for markets, Kathleen, you underwent a similar thing and then also had to deal with the pandemic. Can you share a little bit more information on how maybe it has changed since the pandemic and how that experience has informed the way that you guys navigate safe open markets?
This is actually before my time, but so I know the gist of what Plant Chicago looked like before pandemic times and what the transition, how it affected us. But actually, I would like to thank Stefan. She might not be on this call, but she kind of led our market in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic and before she joins the SIPPAC team. And at the midst of the pandemic, we had all these plans before the pandemic was even a thing, to launch our market, and we had enough grants to provide as much promotion as we can for our new market, new location. And because it was an essential thing, the government did not even consider it as essential at the beginning of the summer. We just said, vendors, come to our backyard. We have a little community garden. Nothing was built at the time. And we invited 3 to 4 essential farmers, and they just set up at our backyard area because these are essential resources in the neighborhood that were at the time not being provided. Grocery stores were empty, and back of the yards is still considered a food desert. So even if there was a grocery store, there wasn't the essential nutrient rich food that would be otherwise accessible to them. And she also launched the food box program, which is basically CSA boxes that we were sourcing from the urban canopy, to also provide that to the community at an affordable price. To this day, it's still on a sliding scale. After all that, we were actually fortunate enough, we spoke enough with the community in the area, the park district, and eventually we're able to open our farmers market at the park through November, through our last market. And that's kind of when I stepped in and I was like, okay, this looks normal. But I've heard the stories and the chaos and the madness of what our market was like. I would like to echo both Matthew and Joan that even in 2021, our market, like, adaptability was essential, and it was intense and very insane. And I'm very thankful that the collective was there, because I kind of jumped into this I don't want to say blindfolded, but I had a perception of what farmers markets were, and I knew that it would be different, but managing a market as in these intense times was very surreal. So yeah, it has shifted how adaptable we are. To this day, we can go back to masks and enforcing that to our vendors, and it allowed us to create very valuable relationship with the vendors to adapt as needed, relocate as needed, and share these resources when needed. I think that's our takeaway moving forward.
I really love the adaptability portion that you touched on, because as I mentioned before, operators of farmers markets, there's usually 1, 2, maybe 3 of us, and maybe even less than that. Some of them are volunteer run, but that touches on how quickly we're able to adapt and how resilient we truly are, because we're so in touch with our communities that we can give them the resources that they need in faster amounts of time, say, than the big box companies. So thank you all for all of your work adjusting through these tumultuous times. And we couldn't be there without the markets to provide that little piece of joy that we get to experience. I see Bob over here in the chat really relied on making those connections throughout the pandemic. And so I kind of want to shift after, pandemic, or we're still in the pandemic, but shifting after the height of the pandemic. And we can all take turns explaining this, but name one challenge that your market faces that maybe market shoppers or community members may not be aware of. For me, I love shopping outside of Green City Market and getting to enjoy those markets, but I know that you guys put in so much work. So name one thing, and hopefully each thing will be different than one another, of a challenge that you experience that may not be visible to the public eye. And Joan, we'll start off with you.
Okay, thank you so much, Taylor. I just wanted to share one thing before I go for that. I know I'm going off track a bit, but not really, because this connects back to what Matthew said. I have some statistics from the Farmers Market Coalition, which is a national organization, and this one really, really, really struck me, which is people who shop at farmers market. Oh, thank you, Taylor. Perfect. People who shop at farmers markets have 15 to 20 social interactions per visit, and that would have been only 1 to 2 social interactions at a grocery store. And again, I think grocery stores are essential, and I in the middle of winter, it's you need that grocery store, and even in the middle of summer, you need that grocery store. But there are just so many benefits, and that one really strikes me, because I do feel that even post-pandemic, it's just the connections between everyone, seeing your neighbors, seeing the vendors who you get to know. It's just incredibly valuable. So I'm going to go back to the actual question, which is the challenge that we are facing. I would actually share that we are facing more climate-related challenges than we ever have. And having run a market over a series of years, I have really noticed things shifting in ways just from when I started in 2010 until now. The seasons are shifting. We used to have to cancel our markets in October because it would be snowing. Now our markets in May typically are very, very cold, and the ones in October, the weather's more temperate. So the seasons have literally shifted. The other thing that we've really become aware of in the last year or two is that we're seeing more. The weather that comes through is much more severe, where the winds are much higher and the rain is much more severe. Just generally, we've had several days at the market where we were able to open, but we saw just like a literal monsoon of weather come through where we had to just really batten down. We would get weather typically, but not at the extreme that I've experienced in the last year or two. So really for me, that's the challenge, and how to figure that out, how to keep everybody safe, and how to continue to run the market or make the judgment calls. If the weather's too severe, if the heat index is too high, just to make sure that everybody stays safe.
I totally hear you on that, Joan. For time, Kathleen, I know you have to jump soon. Can you name one of your greatest challenges that folks may not know shopping your market?
I wouldn't say it's a challenge for us. It's kind of a challenge, but I don't want to call it a challenge because I know it's a work in progress. Having such a small market that is still growing in this community, attendance and having inconsistent attendance is our greatest challenge. Attendance for both our vendors, as much as I love them, a lot of them in the past couple of years really struggled with consistent staff. So they just had to pull the plug and let me know day of, morning of, I don't have the staff to support your market. And that inconsistency, in turn, customers that come to the market were disappointed that those vendors were not available or there for their needs. So it's kind of like a give and take. Attendance on both of them kind of affected our market over the 2 years I've been there. But also speaking with the community members, there's a lot of gang violence, and while it doesn't occur, and we're fortunate enough that it hasn't occurred during our market days, nothing occurs in the daytime. There's a lot of stigma in the park that we're situated at, and we're still trying to our market is one of the few events that happen on a weekly basis that bring peace and joy to that space. And I think over the years it'll grow and people will have a positive impact in that space, but it's still a work in progress. And I know that it'll take years to really establish that. And what was it? Lack of access to Link. In 21 through half of 22, a lot of people had access to Link. And I noticed that a lot of our regulars stopped coming and just came less frequently. And when I asked them, they no longer were Link eligible for X, Y, and Z reasons. And that is very disappointing because they still need the support and resources to have fresh fruits and vegetables. There's nothing in our power that we can do other than just sharing that education with our vendors and seeing if they have an established relationship with the customers, if they can provide sliding scale options. But it also, our vendors need to have a profit to be able to pay their staff. So it's kind of like an unsolvable solution, just gotta keep going. But it does affect attendance overall, and we're hoping that over the years things will be solidified or things will be resolved on their own, and we can provide a space for them to grow, both for the community and for the vendors.
Thank you so much. I also, Matthew, I'm going to take your offer up on skipping you at this time. I do agree that both Kathleen and Joan's responses were quite awesome. But in the interest of time, I would love to move over to our next question. And then if you could also, I'm going to tag on the next question on top of that. So try to keep it brief. And then we'll have time, maybe 5 minutes or so for questions at the end. And then we can also pop in our emails in our chat. So that way, if any folks have any questions about our markets or our organizations, we can follow up after this. But moving on to the next question, and Kathleen, I'll have you go ahead and answer this first. Farmers markets act as a central location, a resource center for producers, processors, shoppers, artisans, community members, and so much more. What is an opportunity that your market can act upon that can aid future-proofing our food system? And on top of that, how can people get involved to support your market as you try to achieve that?
That's a loaded question. I would like to say, coming from a small nonprofit, we're literally a team of 6.5. We have a part-time employee now. We heavily rely on our volunteers and our community support. A lot of our community, like nonprofit organizations in the area and community leaders want to support as well, but they're also have very little staff support. So I understand their lack of response, or their lack of response isn't because they're not interested or we're not able to, or just they have low staffing on their end as well. So volunteer support is my main call out. If you guys live in the area, are near the area, have an interest in circular economy, want to learn or be more connected to sustainability missions and initiatives, that's our location. I know we're a little bit far in the southwest side of Chicago, but it is a journey worth making. And that's my primary thing. Sorry, I think I lost my train of thought.
No, I love that. We all need volunteers. Please come and volunteer at our markets. We could never have enough people power to help keep the mission going forward and our markets keep going. Matthew, we're going to move on to you, especially with the anticipated opening of Chicago market. What is an opportunity that your market can act upon that can aid future-proofing our food system, and how can folks support your market?
So I think, a couple different things, and they tie together, right? The more that you can shop local, don't get me wrong. I love what we're building. I think Chicago market's going to be a great resource, and I think co-ops in general could be a really great resource. Shop local, though, and this kind of all ties together. What can you do for a market? Go and shop local. What can you do for the food shed as a whole? Find ways to shop local. Just because it says local on a shelf when you walk into a certain place, they're not lying to you. Everything, I suppose, is local to somewhere, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's local to here. So, think a bit about where's that food coming from? Do you know the farm? Do you know the area? Could you even name the region that it's in? All those things really make a difference. And so I think, Kathleen's totally right. Volunteer, that can help markets, that helps co-ops. So these are all in together. And the one thing that I will add on the volunteering side too is, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to volunteer. You can raise your hand and say, I could spend 10 minutes a week doing something. We will find something for you to do. That's an email. That's typing up a attendance sheet for one of our events. There's a bunch of different ways that you can help. So if you have the gumption to be able to spend even a little bit of time volunteering, reach out to your local farmers market. And I guarantee that they will be very, very happy to find a way to do something, even if it's that when you come in to shop, you can spend a few minutes at the front greeting. There's a bunch of different ways that can happen, but get involved. And that get involved piece is the biggest piece that you can do that helps to support the farmers. It helps to support the farmers markets. It helps to support places like Chicago market, because that involvement, that care for community, the care for the food and where your food comes from, all those things come together to really, help to solve a very big problem that's out there. And then, of course, again, going back to the audience that's here and everyone that's involved with SIFPAC and all these groups, you're doing it. You're doing it right now just by being here. You're making a step to help with the overall food environment and the food shed and the food world that we live in. So thanks for that. Sorry, went off on a tangent.
No, sorry, necessary. I really love that. And I want to go back to your point of making more of an effort to purchase local. I also want to take the weight off of folks who maybe have cost prohibitive or cost barriers to purchasing local all of the time. But even if it means picking up a carton of eggs from the farmer's market and the rest of your produce coming from the grocery store or wherever you're getting your food, that makes a huge difference from changing at least one small buying pattern that's a regular in your life. So figure out different ways to do that is why I want to offer that option, just in case nowadays folks can't source everything local. But Joan, also would love to hear from you. What is an opportunity your farmers market can act on in future-proofing the food system? And what can you ask for people to support your market?
Well, I would just echo what's been said previously in terms of volunteer involvement. We are a very, very lean, mean operation, and any help is always appreciated. So I can't stress that enough. I think it's a great experience to volunteer at a farmer's market for a lot of different reasons. In terms of future-proofing the food system, I really feel that the support that we give to our vendors who all grow or produce within a fairly local radius, a 200-mile radius, is one way. I think that graphic that you put up earlier, it talks about how we're losing farmland at a kind of frightening rate. And I think that being able to support local growers and producers is just essential and vital. I do understand that sometimes people feel the price point is not accessible for them or not sustainable. You know, I think there are ways to get around that. And I also like to highlight the fact that a lot of times when you buy things from a farmer at a farmer's market, it's not by weight, it's by volume. And it may seem like it's more expensive, but if you're getting a basket of tomatoes and it's several pounds of tomatoes, it may actually not be as expensive as it seems. And I also do feel, you know, obviously things that are grown with organic practices are often a higher price point, but I know that at our market, and I think at every market, really, there's an effort to have a mix of vendors so that there are different price points and different levels of accessibility. So really, I feel like I'm just echoing what's been said, but I think being able to purchase locally grown and produced food is a biggie.
I really love that. And for folks, you know, I saw a shout out here that sometimes, you know, sourcing 100% local can be really overwhelming, but not only are farmers markets central places for purchasing food goods, but they're also community points where other folks come in. So by sheer attendance of our market, you are supporting us. A lot of us do count how many people are coming into our markets. We provide that to funders to be like, these are the people that are attending our market. So showing up really matters. Engaging with our sponsors whose, you know, booths are helping support the mission of the farmers market financially, and engaging with them, that also goes a long way. And there are a number of different food access and education free programs that are at the market. Interact with those. The more people that we interact with those programs, the more that we will, or the more incentivized we'll keep on putting on that program or inviting that partner back to keep on supporting our markets. So there's so many ways to be supporting other than just with your dollar or shopping practices here. It is 3 o'clock. So I also just wanted to touch base with Adam. Did we have any questions in the chat that we didn't answer? Or are there any questions from the audience that they would like to ask any of the market operators?
Yeah, if people have any questions, please feel free to enter them into the chat. We've got a little bit of time. And then also, as I mentioned too, before we all head out, there's just a short little quick poll similar to the one that you did when you all first joined.
Taylor, may I read this one comment that just jumped in from Bob that I think is such a great quote? Thanks to inflation, cheap food isn't that cheap anymore. That's so true. Sorry, that just really struck me, Bob. Great point. So
you're good, Matthew. Thank you. I just wanted to mention to folks too, in the chat, I've included links to all of the farmers markets mentioned. There's obviously a lot more markets that are around Chicago and Chicagoland especially. There are some really helpful guides and maps available for finding the closest to you, learning about its hours and the seasonality of when markets are open. There's a lot of variability between markets. There's actually quite a few winter markets. I don't know if anybody wants to have a quick plug for winter markets that are available to us all right now.
Can I actually just jump in here really quick? I know Taylor, Green City has a great market. I just want to let everyone know that the Illinois Farmers Market Association actually has a winter market information sheet, and it lists all the markets in Illinois by location that are having a winter market. It also gives information about the dates, the time, so really everything you would need to know. And that is actually accessible on their website, which is ilfma.org.
I see Janie just popped in, and I know Kathleen, you have to go. Thank you so much for sparing your time. I know this is a last minute ad, and so thank you so much. Yeah, Maria, I just really want to point out the cost of eggs, right? Like that's been the hottest topic recently, and it's so interesting about farmers markets is that the food chain is so much shorter because the farmers directly supplying you with the good. When it comes to inflation costs, a lot of that has to do with the transportation, the handling, the retail cost, the wholesale cost of that item. And so what you're actually paying for at the grocery store is not directly going 100% going directly back to the farmer, but it's going through all of those other food chain associated costs and logistics. So thank you so much for that point.
Anything else folks want to share or have questions about?
Oh, I will plug that we do have a winter market going through the end of March. Our next one is February 18th. I will be there from open till close.
And where can they find this market?
Oh, it's going to be in Avondale. It's at 3031 North Rockwell Street, closest to the intersection of Rockwell and Belmont. And we would love to see you there. We are triple matching link right now. So we would, for $25, you'll receive $75 in currency. That likely, oh, and a great kids program, free kids tastings, as well as an adult tasting as well. So lots of great programming there too. And then Joan and Matthew, can you just remind us, when are your markets opening so that way we know when to come and support your markets?
Absolutely. Our market opens May 10th. We're a Wednesday afternoon market. We're open every Wednesday from 3 till 7 through October 18th. We are located on Catalpa between Clark Street and Ashland in the heart of the Andersonville Business District, and we would love, love, love to see you. Yeah. Thanks, Taylor.
Thank you. And Matthew.
Yeah, so we're making a move to what we hope is the forever home for our market, which is at the Sunnyside Mall, which runs its Sunnyside between essentially Broadway and Clark, right here in Uptown. But you will be seeing signs all around directing you to exactly where to go. But feel free to come there. You can check us out at uptownfarmersmarket.org or at chicagomarket.coop as well. And I'll toss my email in the chat if anyone has any questions. And if I could just, Taylor, once again, thank you for stepping in. Kathleen, it was wonderful and stepped in as a panelist, but if you didn't know, Taylor also stepped in as the moderator because of another sort of last minute scenario, and you did a fantastic job, and we appreciate all that you do. And frankly, you are often our farmers market. It's what we all aspire to be. Green City does a really fantastic job in helping improve local food shed. So thank you for everything that you do, but certainly thank you for doing this. And thank you to everyone that was here today.
Oh, thank you, Matthew. One of our original panelists is popping in information. There is actually a market happening this Saturday. So go ahead to 61st Street. I'm also going to drop in the website for the Chicago Farmers Market Collective in here, which is all of the markets that participate in our volunteer run collective. Come and visit them as well. And then I'll also shout out at Experimental Station's website for folks who are interested in finding out which markets match SNAP. Please go to the Experimental Station website. There's a whole list of farmers markets within the state of Illinois who are providing those types of benefits. Again, thank you to Adam, the entire CIFPAC team, all of the attendees, as well as the interpreters for such a great panel. It was a joy to be with you all and to step away from the email vortex for a bit. And we look forward to seeing anyone who's going to be at the Friday UIC in-person sessions. And exhibitors will be exhibiting there. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.